car crash cases, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts. The attorneys with Josh Wright from the law firm of Hollis, Wright, and host David Lamb.
Hello and welcome into the attorneys. We appreciate you spending your Sunday evening here with us. For the next half hour, we're going to have a conversation and we'd love you to be a part. You can call, text, email to join the show. Would love to have your questions and your comments and pass them along to our experts. With a winter as brutal and bitter as we had, everyone's itching to hit the water. But what about water and boating safety? That's the topic of a conversation tonight. Would love to have you involved in the conversation. Leading our chat tonight, Carter Clay from the firm Hollis, Wright. You ready to hit the water?
I am. Everybody's ready to get outside after the cold weather that we've had. But in the midst of springtime and summer, people want to get out on the lake. They want to enjoy being on a boat, jet skis, wave runners, and all of those types of outdoor water activities that people like to engage in. Right. In our area, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. We encourage people to do that, to have that kind of fun, but obviously it comes with some level of responsibility.
Right.
Boating safety is extremely important. Whether you're on a wave runner, a jet ski, or in a boat, accidents happen, tragic accidents happen all of the time, and education and awareness is critically important. And that's why we like to do this type of show at this time of year, because it coincides with individuals getting out on the water and engaging in those types of activities. Mm-hmm. And thankfully with us here this evening, we've got Drew McNutt. He's an attorney at our office at Hollis, Wright. He's been with us for almost a year now.
That's right.
He's a lot younger than I am, but he's very knowledgeable in this area of the law, and we're thankful to have you here with us this evening, Drew. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your area of law practice with our firm.
I am a attorney that's been out for close to 7 years now, and primarily focus on personal injury work, single event cases, and periodically we have these issues come up with accidents on the water, and this time of year it's a good topic to talk about.
When we talk about boating accidents, and we talk about car accidents and trucking accidents on this show from time to time, is there a particular unique area of the law relative to boating accidents, or is it quite similar from a legal perspective as you would evaluate a car wreck case?
It's substantially similar to a car accident or a trucking case. There are rules, like rules of the road. There are rules for safe boating that everybody must follow. There are certain requirements that you must meet before you're allowed to drive a personal watercraft vehicle. And basically, if somebody violates those rules, or they entrust a vehicle to or a boat to someone who's not qualified to drive it, there are avenues which you can pursue legal recourse.
Right, and I think there's one exception to your statement that I want to clarify for the viewers, and that is there is a body of law, David, referred to as admiralty and maritime law. And basically what that deals with are accident and injuries that occur in the open seas, whether it be cruise ships. A lot of times people getting injured on cruise ships, that area of the law would apply, or individuals who work on ships who are transporting cargo in the open seas that get injured. That's a body of law that is for a different night. We're not going to be addressing that really here this evening. We're primarily focused on recreational boats, boating laws for recreational use in the lakes, in bays and things like that.
What is the age requirements? How old do you have to be to operate a boat or personal watercraft?
It's sort of there's three sort of categories. Those who can't, those who, once they've passed certain certification requirements, are allowed to freely drive their boat. And there's a middle category that basically you can drive, but it's under supervision.
Right.
12 and under, you are not allowed to obtain a boating certificate or drive a personal watercraft vehicle. 14 and over, once you've passed the testing that's required by the state of Alabama, you can drive without supervision. Now, if you're 12 to 13, approaching 14, you're allowed to drive, but you have to meet certain criteria. Mm-hmm. You have to have obtained your license or your certification. You have to be accompanied by an adult 21 years of age or older who also has a certification. And that adult must be in a position to immediately take physical control of the boat you're driving. So those are the general requirements for who can drive a boat.
And I think that's really important to understand, because how many times do you see where a family's out on a boat and you've got 10, 11, 12-year-old son who's out there, there are no other boats out there. It's real easy to say, why don't you come on up here and operate the boat?
Right.
And so it's real important that people understand what their rights are relative to operating a boat, but what the requirements are for operating a boat as well, for getting a license or being a certified driver or operator of a boat, and who can and who can't and under what circumstances.
Kind of walk us through what steps you should take. Okay, you're on the waterway, you're at the lake, and there's an accident. So kind of walk us through what steps I should take.
Well, the first step is the step you take in any sort of incident where injuries are potentially there. You immediately stop your boat, you check on folks, make sure everyone's okay. If someone is injured, you immediately contact the appropriate authorities, you get the ambulance on the way and that sort of thing. Once all that is sort of settled down and you've determined that, everybody's okay or they're in the process of getting aid, you then have to exchange some information. As the driver, you have to give your name, your address, and your boat's identification information to any potentially injured victims in the accident.
Okay.
You also, before you do that, if you're able to render aid to anyone, it's a requirement that if you can do it safely, you have to do that.
Okay.
But then once that occurs, there are some reporting requirements that are then triggered that you have to complete within 10 days. And those requirements there's 3 categories that require you to report it. The first is if anyone dies or goes missing. The second one is if anyone is injured above what they consider first aid. And the third is if there is property damage above $2,000. You have a requirement as the operator of the boat to contact the proper authorities and report the accident.
There are a lot of similarities between boating accidents and what you do post-accident as there are to motor vehicle accidents. Just like we have state troopers and police officers in various municipalities that will investigate motor vehicle accidents, they're marine police on the lakes and in the ocean and in the bays that will not only investigate accidents, but will also give you tickets if you violate certain boating rules. Just like we have rules of the road for cars, we have rules of the waterways for boats and watercrafts and things like that.
I think it's important to note right here that those requirements for when you report the accidents, those don't mean you can't report an accident if you don't fall within one of those categories. Sort of the tracking of a lot of these statistics has been skewed when they changed the property damage requirement from $500 to $2,000. It's sort of cut down on the number of accidents that have been reporting. I don't know if necessarily we're having fewer accidents. We're just getting fewer reported because the threshold for the property damage reporting requirement has been increased. So even if no one's injured, no one dies, and the property damage is minimal, I would encourage people to report them simply because we would be able to better track the statistics on how safe are our lakes and things of that nature.
Yeah. All right. Let's take our first break of the night right here. We'll step aside just for a couple of minutes, but we'll be back. As we head to break, a reminder of how you can join the conversation. If you have a question about this, you want to understand the law about the waterways and all those sorts of things you've always wanted to know, now is the time to get those questions answered. You can call 844-LAW-TALK, or you can text, email, all that information there on your screen. And a reminder, you can check out Hollis Wright on Facebook if you'll search that term. And there on Twitter, it's Hollis_Wright. So plenty of ways to get in touch with the firm of Hollis Wright. Stay tuned. More of The Attorneys coming right up.
I'm Carter Clay with the law firm of Hollis Wright. Thanks for watching The Attorneys on WVTM 13. Now we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never need legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of this show is simple: to provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to this show or related to other specific legal matters, call, email, or text us to talk with one of our lawyers. You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter to learn about important legal news that could affect you or your family member. Or simply contact us by going to WVTM13.com and click on the Attorneys link. Now we know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and for watching The Attorneys right here on WVTM 13.
Welcome back into the attorneys talking about boating safety. Apparently, the numbers there showing that boating safety and the education is working. We'd love to have you be a part of the conversation tonight. If you have questions, attorneys are standing by right now to speak with you, so pick up that phone and give them a call. Carter?
Yeah, Drew, are there particular watercrafts that are more prone to accidents than others, like power boats or jet skis, wave runners? What are you seeing in that regard?
Generally, the more power you have, the more chances of when an accident does happen, you're going to have more severe injuries. So yeah, your motorboats, your cabin cruisers, your jet skis, which also present a problem for how they work and being able to steer them once you're faced with an emergency and you slam on the brakes or let off the throttle. It sort of limits the ability to steer a jet ski and can cause some further damage.
Yeah, and obviously you've got a propeller on a boat, you're water skiing and engaging in those types of activities. There have been a lot of injuries over the years relative to individuals being injured from the propellers on boats. And like you mentioned earlier, with jet skis and wave runners, when they were first introduced and placed on the market, there were a lot of injuries, and still are, unfortunately, today in terms of steering issues, braking issues. There's no brake, and sometimes in certain situations they can be very difficult to steer, and you get into all kinds of issues associated with warnings and training and supervision relative to jet skis and wave runners and things like that.
What types of injuries most commonly occur on the waterways? What kind of injuries are we talking?
A lot of them are injuries you see in other personal injury actions. You have death is obviously something that can occur, and a lot of the deaths occur because you are injured and then you end up in the water and you end up drowning. An individual ends up drowning. Obviously the most severe injury that you can have on the water, but you have paralysis, herniated discs, lacerations, contusions, people fall, hit their heads, things of that nature.
Yeah, and one of the things I would mention as a corollary to boating accidents is water skiing, boogie boards, tubing. A lot of kids behind a boat being pulled. It's very fun, very recreational part of activities on the waterway, but you have to be really careful. I mean, the forces that you can hit pulling children on a tube are tremendous, and we've seen people with broken legs, broken arms, unfortunately, the worst case scenario, death or even spinal cord injuries and things like that, because they're just being pulled too fast and they get slung off of these tubes, and things like that can just really cause some devastating injuries.
What are the most common causes of boating accidents?
Inattentiveness, people not paying attention to other people on the water. Unfortunately, alcohol is a contributing factor to a lot of these types of accidents. People are having a good time out on the water and maybe having too much of a good time sometimes, and it can lead to a whole host of problems.
Yeah, alcohol is a big issue. I think as a society we don't relate driving an automobile and drinking and those dangers to operating a boat and drinking. We think that it's much less likely for anything to happen, and it kind of goes with the territory. You're out on the lake, you're enjoying yourself, you're out on the boat, people are going to have beer on the boat and those types of things. So I think a lot of people are more apt to consume alcohol, and quite frankly, individuals may be more apt to consume alcohol that don't drink on a consistent basis. And what I mean by that is their tolerance is not as great as somebody who may drink more consistently, and because of that they become more impaired. Then you factor in the heat, the sun exposure, that aggravates the level of impairment or intoxication that sometimes people feel, and they get drowsy and tired, and it's just a compounding factor there that can lead to devastating consequences.
A question we have here: I was recently injured in a boating accident by an irresponsible and unsafe manner of another boat driver, so someone else was liable. Can they be held liable for causing an accident?
Yes, depending on the facts, of course, just as you would have in an automobile case. There are rules that control the water the same way there are rules that control the roadways, and if they are passing you or overtaking your vehicle, they have certain things that they have to do as far as warnings and safety that they must follow, and if they didn't follow those things, you may have a cause of action, and depending on who's driving the boat, you could also have a potential cause of action against a third party, someone who entrusted them with the boat, if it's a young kid, or if they entrusted it to somebody that was known to be drinking. For example, those are all causes of action you could pursue.
From an attorney's perspective, the analysis in evaluating these types of cases is very similar to a car wreck case. The issue is, did the operator of the boat do something wrong, or unreasonable in the operation of the boat that led to or caused somebody to be injured. And if they did, then they may very well be liable for causing those injuries, and you may have a legal cause of action.
Okay. And quickly, statute of limitations, a question on that. Is there a statute of limitations?
Yes. Okay. Generally, if it's going to be controlled by Alabama law, it'll be 2 years from the date of the loss, which would be the accident.
All right.
If it happened in Alabama, if it happened in another state, then that state statute of limitations would apply.
Yeah. All right. Let's step aside. We'll take our final break of the evening. We'll do that when we come back. Plenty of time to answer more of your questions. Would love to hear from you as we head to break. A reminder, attorneys are standing by to speak with you, so take advantage of this opportunity. Stay tuned. The final segment of The Attorneys coming right back.
I'm Josh Firth with the law firm of Hollis, Wright. Most of us have either been involved in or we know someone who's been involved in an automobile accident. Sometimes the police will issue a ticket if one party is at fault. But what about those times when a ticket is not given? In tonight's Legal 411, we're answering the question, who is responsible when no ticket is issued? Just because there is no ticket does not mean there is no liability, especially if someone is injured in the crash. First, it's important to understand the law. Did you know that unless an officer personally sees the crash, he can't write a ticket even if he is certain the other person is at fault? There are 2 exceptions to this rule. 1, if someone is driving under the influence, and 2, if someone doesn't have proof of insurance for their vehicle. Even if a ticket is issued, that is not a guarantee of liability or that the injured party will win the case in front of a jury. However, a jury may find a person liable for negligence if the person at fault was driving improperly or violated one of these 6 rules of the road. For example, driving without proper taillights, texting or talking on the phone, improper lights or signals on a trailer, failure to yield to oncoming traffic, hitting another car from behind, or changing lanes improperly or without signaling. Any of these can serve as a basis for a jury to find someone negligent for causing an accident and injuring another person or their property. So the person who caused the accident is ultimately responsible for the injuries even if the police officer does not assign fault. But you have to prove liability. That's why it's so important to ask for legal guidance if you are ever injured in a crash. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer the questions you face on real issues every day. And remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thank you for watching The Attorneys.
That firm fact pretty much says it all. Don't drink and drive, and don't drink and get behind the wheel of a boat either. Welcome back to The Attorneys, our final segment tonight, talking about boater safety. If you have any questions, we'd love to pass those along to our panel of experts. Have a few minutes remaining, so go ahead and get those questions in to us. Carter?
Drew, in the last segment, we primarily focused on the liability that the operator of the boat may confront if he wrongfully operates the boat and somebody gets injured. But are there any other avenues of potential recovery or investigation work that you do as an attorney to explore other avenues of recovery or liability for other individuals or entities involved in the boat itself?
There are, and it's I keep analogizing it to car cases, but there is a lot of similarities, and particularly in product liability cases. The boats that everybody is driving are generally manufactured by some sort of manufacturing company who then places these in the stream of commerce. And if they have a problem with them, sort of a defective design or a defective manufacturing process, you can potentially pursue them. It's a potentially tougher case, more expensive case to litigate, but those are some of the areas you can go after.
Right, and those would be primarily reserved for very significant injuries and even death because obviously those are expensive cases. You have to get experts involved, engineers involved to conduct investigation work, to evaluate the mechanical operations of the boat, perhaps even reconstruct the boating accident in order to be able to prove that kind of case. But really what you're potentially looking at may be a design defect where the boat or the jet ski was designed in a defective way. We talked about steering issues and throttling issues with jet skis and wave runners earlier. Those were a big area of litigation many years ago because people were getting injured because of the defective nature of the steering on those types of units. We've seen situations where the dead man switch or kill man switch didn't work properly, where the person fell out of the boat. It didn't cut off as it should have, and the person was run over by the boat or got his foot or leg caught up under the propeller and sustained some serious injuries. There's also the potential for claims against a mechanic for maintenance problems. Let's say, for instance, you are having an engine problem and you take your boat to a mechanic to evaluate and work on the engine to correct the problem, and he does so in a negligent manner. He causes more problems, doesn't fix the problems, that leads to an accident. That's a potential avenue for recovery. So anybody, if you think that if you've been in a boating accident and you don't think that it was your fault, you think that something was wrong or went wrong with the mechanical operation of the boat, you need to contact an attorney immediately, because that evidence has to be preserved. You don't want to change or alter the boat in any way or fix it in any way, because experts need to come in and evaluate the mechanical aspects of the boat to see if something really went wrong that could lead to liability against those entities.
As folks are kind of looking, as we're heading into summer and the heavy boating season, do you have some tips and just some sensible tips and advice as to try to ensure not only an enjoyable boating experience but also a safe one for the families as well?
Yeah, I mean, the number one is make sure you're either wearing a life jacket or have one immediately available to you. Make sure that there are plenty of life jackets on board. If you got 7 folks, make sure you got 7 life jackets. Don't assume that you're not going to be in an accident. Be prepared and make sure you have enough life vests in case something went wrong with the boat. Make sure the person operating the boat isn't impaired. Make sure he or she hasn't been drinking all day before he gets behind there and starts taking you out on a cruise. Another thing that a lot of people aren't really being or thinking about is potential carbon monoxide poisoning from your engine. There's all sorts of things you can do to sort of ensure that you have an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, be attentive. Make sure that children have life jackets on. There's certain age requirements where children on a boat have to be wearing a life jacket. Marine Police will pull you over and actually give you a fairly significant ticket if they find that a child is not wearing their life jacket, and they should be. But really just paying attention. If you are going to consume alcohol, do it in moderation. If you get tired, have somebody else drive the boat. But really attention to detail, expect the unexpected, look out for other boating operators on the waterway, boats and things like that. Don't be careless, especially if you've got individuals that you're pulling on skis or on tubes and things like that. Space is a huge important factor. Try and create as much space between you and other boaters as possible, and if it's in a congested area, try and give yourself some separation.
Question we have here: if I've been injured in a boating accident, what type of damages would I be able to recover in a lawsuit?
They would be whatever damages you can present and prove, but they would be the damages that are available in all personal injury type actions: medical expenses, lost wages, property damage, mental anguish, pain and suffering. If it's a severe injury and you're looking at some sort of permanency, there are all sorts of experts that you can sort of be evaluated by to evaluate the permanency of your long-term lost wages and sort of your life care plan if you're going to require medical treatment extended into the future. If the accident involves a death, obviously you would have some sort of action under the Alabama wrongful death statute, which raises another set of issues given the current state of that law.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, that's what we do on a day-to-day basis when we're representing individuals who have been involved in any type of catastrophic injury, closed head injury, traumatic brain injury, burn injuries, those types of things. We're always exploring and evaluating the future needs of those individuals, because when you are seriously injured and incapacitated or totally disabled, you're going to have future needs, and those are allowable damages that you can claim under the law.
Okay. One other question, about 3 minutes remaining, but time enough hopefully for this one in the closing thought. I was injured in a boating accident. Do I need to tell the police about that accident?
That depends. Like we discussed earlier, there are reporting requirements, but if you were injured and you are not the operator of one of those boats, you are not required to report it. However, just because you're not required doesn't mean you shouldn't.
Right.
If you're injured and you don't know whether or not the operator of the boat or boats reported the accident, you need to contact the appropriate authorities and make sure an accident report has been generated. Provide them with the name and information of the people who are driving the boats so that they can begin an investigation.
And why is it important to have an attorney if you're injured in a boating accident, you think?
Well, for a lot of different reasons. I mean, if you're injured in a boating accident, in order to pursue your legal rights, you're likely going to have an attorney, especially if you're going after a product manufacturer or the manufacturer of the boat or some type of maintenance company that poorly maintained the boat. Those are just a number of reasons why you would want to have an attorney to protect your rights.
Yeah. Less than 2 minutes remaining, so time enough for both of you. Just a final thought, final charge from you, and Drew, you go first.
I think the biggest issue is people just, sort of having too much fun. But before you get out on the water, make sure you're prepared. As we discussed, make sure you're taking all the necessary steps to ensure that everybody's going to get off the water safely. Too many times we all just go hop in the boat and go cruise around, and we're not thinking about the things that can happen. Mm-hmm. But if you're prepared beforehand, obviously it can really minimize the potential dangers and risk while you're out there.
Yeah, unlike driving an automobile, which we do year-round, boating, jet skiing, having wave runners, tubing, water skiing, it's a seasonal activity. Mm-hmm. Starts with the spring and kind of goes through into the summer. Education, awareness, and training, teaching your children good boating habits, safety tips relative to them being on the boat, what not to do, what to do, a refresher course at the beginning of the spring season before you actually get out on the boat. I think those are very helpful tips and advice that viewers should take hold of before they just get out on the boat and start engaging in those types of activities. I think that's what they need to do to protect themselves and protect the children and the other individuals who are out on the water.
Yeah, seems like if you eliminate alcohol and wear those life jackets, it really will cut down on any sort of accidents and injuries, doesn't it?
Significantly. I mean, alcohol is a big part of a lot of these accidents.
All right. Gentlemen, thanks so much. Appreciate the time tonight. Also, thank you so much for joining us. Hope this has been beneficial and informational to you as we wrap things up. Remember, you can still get in touch with the firm of Hollis Wright. They return every email and call, so get in touch with them. Thanks so much for the time. We'll see you next week right here on The Attorneys.